Yeah, welcome back to our last presentation for the day. Somebody in the forum told us that we don't have our big gong. And of course, I responded very quickly because that's present for every Checkmk conference as our sort of beginning. And I think it's very fun. We counted more than 310 participants for this slot because I don't even think I sent out many addresses, but I think somebody might have leaked it. But of course, we're always happy to have so many people on board today. So now we are going to talk about user experience. And before I get started with that topic, I would just like to tell you something. So at the end of the presentation, we are going to have a quick survey. And that's why you are going to find something in your conference platform. There's going to be a tab that's called polls. Right next to Q&A, don't click on that. Do not click on it just yet. We are going to do the poll in the end because I would like to tell you more about that before we get started. Okay, so I would say let's get started. I recently, when we were actually doing the tutorial videos, I actually looked at the old videos from 5 or 6 years ago. We created 3 videos then, or 2, something like that. And what I thought was very interesting was how simple Checkmk was. I have a screenshot for you, and that's really from the video. And this is really what it looked like when you wanted to create a host in Checkmk. So it looks very, very simple here. You have a host name, an IP address. So very, very simple. This is what the world used to like for us, and everything was still simple back then. And if you now look at a Checkmk system, it looks like this. Apart from the fact that the checkboxes are just going back and forth, that's a browser problem with the screenshot. So there are a lot more different things that are available. And of course, there are actually some that aren't even expanded. Okay, so why is case? Well, Checkmk is just very, very complex now, and we have a lot of different features. And of course, that's what we want. And the features are very good because they also solve problems that you experience. So you can say every feature in this Checkmk is a feature that one of you needed, and we then actually created them together with you to see how we implemented them and so on. So as of today, we're in a situation where everything is very, very big. But of course, beginners and also even experienced users sometimes have some issues because of that, because the masks and menus are very, very long now. Okay, so in project, the project we're carrying out right now, it's the project to improve user experience. We said, okay, the primary goal is to make sure that for beginners and users who sometimes use Checkmk, we just want to make sure that Checkmk is easier. So the casual users, that's what we're calling them. But it's very important to me personally because we also want power users, experienced users. I mean, we don't want to take any features away from them. We also don't want to get more complicated for them or anything like that. And of course, we also, our second step would be we want to make sure that we look at all the big installations. For example, if we have thousands of users, 300 sites, etc. So even for those, it's an improvement, not only for beginners or casual users. Okay, so of course, we also just thought about, okay, what kind of areas are within Checkmk where it's really about usability. Of course, we didn't only go by our own gut feeling. We also asked you at last year's conference. We also had some surveys, etc. We also asked our consultants, and we ended up thinking that these are the main areas. First of all, it's the whole question of how do I get somewhere? So that means that we're calling it main navigation here, and that is definitely connected to the sidebar. So the sidebar today, this is what it looks like, and it's a mix of elements that can show compromised data information. So it's an overview, basically. And of course, we also had a discussion here, do we even need that? And I said, no, we do need it, keep it. So we also had a poll, and then it turned out that the majority of Checkmk users are using the technical overview. So of course, that is very, very nice. So we really learned that it's definitely something that's useful to you. Another thing that's quite difficult, though, is the happens for navigation, though. So you all know the view snap-in, and if it's not expanded, it looks somewhat short. But if you then start expanding it, you just have to start scrolling quite quickly. We're not even talking about the wow to snap-in with 30 or 40 menu points, where you have to scroll, or alternatively, you can use the quick access where you can only see icons. But again, it's more and more difficult to find what you're looking for. And that's the one topic. And another that stands out next is that all of you know that we have these buttons. Those are the buttons right here on the page itself, on top of the page. And in this example, it's not that many, but if you've actually looked at the service detail view, for example, there are going to be 4 or 5 different rows of these buttons. And it was our idea to sort of expand them. The buttons that are used most often show up first, but that's also problematic because then they're shifting. And of course, there's no grouping that makes sense. And also, it's a very simple problem because the button has to be very small. So we have a limited amount of space for text, and text is not telling you a lot, unfortunately. So that is one point that we actually looked at. So we definitely have to do something about that. And then some people asked us, where am I? So I just clicked randomly on Checkmk. I'm on some random page, Docker containers, for example, or whatever Waito subpage it may be. How do I even get there? And how can I actually get back, etc.? So in this case, you could guess that it could go with a view snippet. So you can go to applications, Docker containers, but very often you sort of lose track of where you are. And that's not only due to the fact of the way we're showing it, but also because there's no concept right now in terms of hierarchical architecture, but every architecture is the same, and the same for Waito as well. So we definitely also want to do something about that. Okay, so talking about this quick search, we also had an idea when it comes to that. So quick search, everybody that uses Checkmk, you're going to be familiar with that because you can use it to quickly look for hosts and services. Another thing you can't do in quick search, though, is you can't look for configurations. For example, it could be where is the rule set for the notification period, or where is the contact group Linux, for example. So it's just static configuration elements and specific settings and modules, or also data sets that you created yourself. So there's a specific rule that you created. The idea is that this search can be expanded, or we could have a second search that could be introduced that is just globally searching throughout the whole Checkmk. And that way you can just type in something and you're going to find host services, water rules, etc. And it's just easy access. And it's sort of like a small Google for Checkmk, basically. Okay, so another form that you've probably seen before. So this is just to create a host. It's just one of many. You know all the different things: global settings, user setting, etc. And there are a lot of different settings. And of course, there are groups. You can also make them smaller, etc. But what's impossible is that if you're a new user, you can't differentiate what's important. So what kind of setting is a setting that you will need and which ones do you not need. Of course, there are some people who need all the special settings, but most people don't. And everybody still has to go through all the different options. Of course, you could say that there could be one box with the 5 most important options, but then the settings are together anymore. So this is not ideal either. And it's definitely something that we want to change. Okay, talking about dashboards. That's also a very popular topic. So this is one dashboard. Martin created that before for a blog article. And this is just something that he actually created. It's a dashboard that he manually created where he has an ESX cluster in monitoring. And there are 19 hosts from this cluster with the most important values. And you can actually create dashboards like that. What's nice about that is that they also adapt to the size of your screen if you do it properly. However, it is a little boring to just see tables in these dashboards or maybe a graph. But as Lars already said this morning, we want more dashboard elements, and we also want to have some views that could be interesting for managers, so very compromised information, and also creating that is quite difficult today. And that's why we want to really do something about that. Okay, so as a result of all of that, we said, okay, there are going to be four steps that we want to take in order to your experience. First of all, overall, that's the whole topic of navigation. So how do I reach all the respective pages, etc., using the sidebar, the context button, so you know where you are, or also the super search. And the second point would be just clarity. So, I don't know, cleaning up forms, etc. is also a topic that's important to me. What are things called? So in Checkmk, that's not very consistent. Sometimes you may find things where they're calling it inventory, but then we're calling it discovery later on. So just terminology needs to be cleaned up. And then also help text need to be more descriptive. Also sometimes the order of options. So global settings, for example, if you look around, sometimes you're surprised to see that some settings don't belong together. They're not in a row, but sometimes they're even in different boxes. So to me, this is also part of it, just making sure that you create some more clarity. And also maybe it could just be more visually pleasing. The third thing we want to do is just one thing that, of course, is really affecting us at Checkmk, because we have a system that in and of itself is interesting for beginners as well, because it does a lot of things automatically. So you can get a host into monitoring without knowing a lot. But we also have some users that really have extremely complex environments that they're monitoring. So it's a software that actually had a wide bandwidth and can actually cover a lot, and that is something that we want to show in our user interface. So we just want to make sure that you can use it being a beginner, but also a beginner and also an experienced user, so you have the view that's most appropriate for you. And then talking about dashboards, of course, we sort of excluded that for now as a fourth stream, because this is really just about the dashboards being simplified, looking nicer, and also showing more information. Okay, and then, of course, another thing that's very important to us is, and I know that from the past, from my very first customer, Heinz Wacker, so if I just changed one button in the GUI, he just said, oh my goodness, it looks different now, and all of my colleagues are coming to my office, and they're very confused because the interface has changed. We do know that that's an important point, and it's very important that there is some consistency and that you can recognize it, etc. So even though there are some new things, we're still going to try very hard to create it in a way that you are going to recognize Checkmk, and your colleagues will also recognize Checkmk, so it's not too much for them. So that's why a lot of things are going to remain the way they are, and we're just going to add to it step by step. There are some instances, though, where we are going to have to make some changes, and you can configure it to the way you would want to, but hopefully it's such a big improvement that everybody's going to be happy with it. Okay, so where are we at in this process right now? So this is just a quick overview to show you. The green bar is today, so what has already happened? Well, we've already just asked our customers at partner days and conferences, and also the consultants met with some customers, and we just evaluated where the pain points are. So what is annoying about Checkmk, what's difficult about it, and we then thought about, okay, how could we solve this problem? We did mock-ups, and we just did that with a pen on paper or graphic tools. And we also just implemented some prototypes, and I want to show you more about that later on. And we also did some user tests, but we're very much in the beginning stages of that. So it is very important to us to include as many as possible, and that is what we haven't done in the past. But we didn't do that for the GUI, but we really want to do that in depth. So starting from today, this is the first step. This conference, we're going to make use of that, and we're going to do that at the end of this presentation. I'm just going to do some polls and surveys and ask you how you feel about things, what you think about them. And out of the mock-ups that I'm going to show you, and we're then going to iterate that even more with a forum, with specific customers, with people in our core consultants, etc. And we are then going to get feedback to just see which option you like better. And also if you want us to have colorful icons, do you want them on the left-hand side, right-hand side, top, bottom, etc. And yeah, now just so that it's not too much theory, I just like to show you an example. So over the course of the past few months, we've worked hard. We haven't only drawn pictures, but we've also just created a branch of the software by just implementing some concepts, and some of them are sort of just wild. And after a few years, I was involved in that as well, just because I know that I'm not going to have to maintain the code later on, so I could just go wild, basically. So those are things that I've tried. There's still some bugs in there, etc., but that wasn't even important. It was just all about the concepts and being able to try them, and also just trying to see what they feel like. And I would just like to show you a live demo. And what I have here, I've prepped something for you on my computer. So what I have here is a demo site. So it's not on this computer, but it's locally in our network. And there is a branch on there from the current status of the software development. So the Checkmk master branch with the changes in the prototype. So I'm just going to show you that. So what you see here is a Checkmk system. This time it's the dark theme. So the prototype is now this dark theme. And the reason for that was that I actually started with that and I prefer it. I like it better. So there was no strategic background or anything like that. And once we're done with that, it's going to work with all the other views as well. Okay, so at first glance, it's very similar. The dashboard wasn't changed yet. So there's nothing to see here in this prototype, but what stands out is the top left-hand corner. So you can see that in the sidebar there are menu points now that are set. So this is not a snap-in, but instead they are 4 main entry points, 2 affecting configuration and 2 monitoring, and everything else, those are the snippets. So the quick access right here, this is really not necessary anymore. It's just in here so you can see that it still works. And of course, I can also remove it. And if I now click on monitoring, for example, you're going to see everything that is in the view snap-in today, plus a couple extra things that are missing in the mockup. So I have a 2-step hierarchy. I have topics, and then there are entries under that. And up here, there's a very fun switch. It's a switch that is switching between basic and advanced. And our assumption is that there are going to be a lot of views that are going to be not interesting for 80% of the users because they're not relevant. So you can just exclude them. I really am not exactly sure which ones they are yet, but this is just an example. So you can just see if you switch it on, there are a couple extra views as well. And of course, there's also a max vertical size. So I'm going to have to scroll at one point in time. That's why we've tried to actually exclude some of them in a second menu. So this is the customization, for example. So how can I actually adapt my own views, dashboards, etc. So all of that was quite complicated in the past to find. And all the things that is still called WATO is the configuration. It's split up in the config that you need for the actual monitoring and the administration. So that would be distributed monitoring, backup, etc. Okay, so now there's another option right here, and that option you can change in the personal settings, but later on we're going to decide to go with one of the 2 options, and that's the one we're going to go with. So because I can say I'm going to show it a little bit differently, I'm going to show you what that would look like in just a second. And alternatively, the menu could be at the bottom and not at the top. And then there's also an option with icons where you can just say, okay, I have an icon for, well, not like here per topic, but instead, as it was in the past. So if I just save that and then I refresh, then you can see that the menu is now at the bottom. And why is it only 2 points, not 4? The only reason for that is that we now have a so-called mega menu. And in this option, the lines and columns. So I actually have a pretty big screen right here. So if you have a normal size screen, then this is probably what it's going to look like. This is probably going to be the size of it. And just for this video, I just zoomed in so you can read it easily. Okay, so in this case, everything would be in one menu, even with complex settings. And then also, if it's simplified, it's even more more than that. Okay, and then I'm going to show you this option where I have an icon per entry. And in our team, of course, a lot of discussions about that, because aesthetically more pleasing would probably, at least from my point of view, be an icon per topic. On the other hand, I also think that there are some recognition values. For example, if you know downtime is the orange circle, you're going to find the two entries a lot quicker versus just having to read the text. So there's pros and cons, and I'm very curious to see what you have to say about that. And configuration, that's Waito, and it's exactly the same entries as in the snap in today. However, they are listed in topics right now. And we also have one additional thing that we've tried right here, and that's the point host service parameters. And that's also split up in individual rules. So we have the agent configuration, that is the collection of all rules that I need in order to configure the agent bakery. And in the past, there was a point of host and service parameters, but they're really not host and also not service parameters, but agent configuration. And that's why an idea is that we could now actually make that a separate entry. So that is the idea for the main navigation. And the super search, unfortunately, I can't show that because we haven't programmed it yet. So theoretically, I could also search for inventory, and I could then also find the rule that helps you switch on the inventory for hosts or something like that. Or you could also look for backup, and you wouldn't only find a servers that's called backup 01, but you could also find the configuration module where you can actually do the Checkmk. So this is actually the main navigation. And the second point is something that is called in-page navigation. In-page, what we mean by that is just everything that's just happening on one specific page. So everything that's not in the sidebar, so that means site-specific. So on the right-hand side, what I have, for example, that's the view all hosts. And there are only 2 hosts included right now. And what you see here and what stands out is that we have no buttons anymore. So if I just click on the view to the specific host, again, there are no buttons. Where are the buttons? Where are the icons that were at the bottom, and where are all the other things? Well, they're now in menus. So all the typical drop-down menus, that's a concept that we know from typical desktop applications. And that is something that we tried to apply here as well on Checkmk. What's special about that is that they're always context-based. So depending on what kind of menu you have and also what they contain depends on the page that you're seeing here. Other than that, it's what you're used to. So you can just expand it, and you can see that, for example, there are commands that I can use for these services. And if I want a downtime schedule, I just click on that. And also what's special about that is that the commands aren't in one big box and summarized, but they now have individual actions. And it's a bug that the menu is not closing right now. Of course, I can fix that by just making it smaller. And then I can just say, okay, now I can do what I'm used to. I just want to see downtime, for example, for 2 hours. And what you see here is also that it's quite annoying that the page has to rebuild. Of course, there's going to be a pop-up in the future so that you really don't have to leave the page at all. Another idea is that within the menus, for the third time, you can really have this icon or really the switch. So again, you can say, okay, there are specific actions or entries that are used very often. For example, I don't know if any of you have ever used the cleared attributes. Many of you that have used it are advanced users. If you don't use it very often, that I'm happy if I don't have to see it, and if you only see the things that you need that are relevant to you. So edit menu would be where I can carry out actions, where I can change things, and navigate would be you'd be redirected to different views, for example. So the majority of what was in context buttons is now in here, and you can see that there are also groups to it, and the grouping makes it possible for you to also find new names. So if you say, for example, off scheduled downtimes, then you will actually see the timing and not the current scheduled downtimes, which would be found here. Display menu would be settings that we could found as separate things, for example, changing the date format, etc. That's a little pop-up, or also just saying, okay, I want to change the number of columns. In the past, there was just a single option, and a lot of people didn't understand how that works. Okay, and in the Add to menu, that used to be a button at the bottom where I would say, okay, I really want the view to dashboard or add it to reports, and export would be a summary of everything that whatever you see here, you can download as a PDF, as a CSV, or maybe also supporting. So those are just experiments at this point in time. This is not the final version at all. So don't think, oh my goodness, why is it so strange now? Of course, we want to discuss it with you. And if you think that it's very, very confusing at this point is here right now, then we're going to find a better place for it. And what you see here are shortcut icons. So that means that we are picking, based on our knowledge, we're going to pick the things that you need quite often or most often. And it's just by the click of a button. So that means it would be availability, it would be the search filter, and the suggestion of having metrics right here, I don't think it's all that relevant, but maybe I'm wrong. So of course that can be discussed. What kind of shortcuts make sense to you? Now, okay, what you see up here is the breadcrumbs, so you can see where you are. And of course, don't confuse it with the browser path that led you there. It doesn't matter what kind of path you took to get there. If you actually click on this overview right here, you're going to get to all hosts as well, and also to this server. And it really doesn't matter at all how you got there. It's not the history, but it's really the point where you are. And by clicking on breadcrumb or the arrow, you can actually click up. So you can see services from host my server 01 are right under all hosts. Okay, so now I'm going to go to a configuration, hosts and services, for example. And what you see here is just another feature, which is the so-called suggestions. And those are, well, something similar has existed in the past, only in the folder layer bar. So you know if there's an empty folder, there's a suggestion that you can create a host, but creating a host is something that you do so often that it's more convenient to have a button for that. And even for power users, that's more convenient. And also for beginners, it's nice to see, yes, okay, those are probably the two most important actions that I can carry out. So create a host or a folder. And that way you're not in this big menu and you have to think about, okay, what is what I wanted to do here? Specifically, if everything's expanded here. So those are the so-called suggested actions. Okay, let's open one of them. And what you see here, this is the mask to edit a host or to create one. It looks very, very similar, as you know. So at first glance, it looks very similar to the past because the boxes can be expanded or not. However, this switch right here is now here for the fourth time. So that means you can, well, you're not expanding everything or closing everything, but just the essential settings are going to remain. As you see here, network address, for example. So I'm just going to say that when you're doing monitoring within a company, IPv4 is still the standard. So this is an error right here. So the standard is still that you really need this one area, and all the other settings like dual step monitoring, etc., additional IP addresses and so on. Unfortunately, they're on here. So those are the things that you usually need very rarely, I would say. And now I have the possibility to actually create it in a way where everything you need, you can see at a glance. Okay, so this is our suggestion in regards to how these complex forms can be simplified.
So let's go back to the views. I forgot that before, and I want to ask you about it. And those are the search filters. From the old Checkmk, when you click on the magnifying glass, you get these boxes. And then I have to find the filter that I'm actually looking for. Now, the idea is to put the search filters into a pop-up, which will hopefully appear above the menu, not underneath. And this pop-up will then show 3 or 4 filters by default per view. The fundamental ones, for example, so I can look for names, but I can also customize them by removing it, or I can also add a filter. For example, I can want to add IP address. The text is white on, so I can say I want that filter too. And this is supposed to be persisted per user. So when I adapted the view, I have all the filters that I like using. So that's pretty much what we have considered for this demo system, the mock-ups. We also want to improve on the help system, hosts and services, for example. There is a help button here with a possible help menu, which doesn't require that I open the online help, but access handbook articles that are related to the page I'm on. So I open the handbook page for the administration of hosts, and then I'm already on the correct page in the Checkmk handbook. Of course, the mock-up now is in English, regardless of what language I have said, but language settings should, of course, be included. So having an English setting, but you read German articles, that should also be possible. We could also create links for tutorial videos that match the topics. Right now, we are producing a new video every 2 weeks, not just beginners videos, but also expert videos and special topic videos, and they would also be shown here. So that's it about the demo. Oh yeah, I forgot snap-ins. With snap-ins is also the idea there could be a simple and advanced view. So those of you who wondered in the technical view, where are the handled problems? I can click this little button here, and then I get an advanced view. So as a beginner, I would say I don't need the problems that have been handled. So maybe these could be switched off, or the performance could also possibly be one issue where I could say some lines may not be important, like number of live connections. If I don't even know what that means, why would I have it displayed? Maybe I just want to look at my checks. So we tested this for 2 snap-ins, and it could be expanded to more snap-ins and thereby make the whole system leaner. So that's what I wanted to show you in the mockup. Perhaps we will have more questions in the Q&A later, and we can jump back to that. But I want to show you one screenshot. I mean, we were talking about user experience concepts, but of course the user interface design also has a design, so the look of it. Easy to use, easy to navigate. This is a little sneak preview from a list of services. And you can see, well, the designer had it quite easy. All these plugins are so short, but that's actually part of the design. We are considering, as a part of the new Check API, to have the plugin outputs split up, that there is always a summary that gives you a short overview of what this check is actually giving us. For example, files with 50% full, and all the further details are in the field which is now called long output. So what you see directly is a summary, and the other thing is details, and then you get all the details of that output. And this enables you to see at a glance what's really important. And you can fit it in one line, and this really helps improving the layout. The designer also tried to make the perform meter in one color. I think it looks cool and easy on the eye. Some will say, well, but I like the colored ones like we had in the past, but that's also something we were going to ask you about. Yeah, and before we get to your questions, we would like to do a little survey first. There are 15 questions for you. Most of them are just A or B questions, yes or no questions. There are in BigMarker, and on the right side, there is a tab, and it will happen like this. I will explain the questions in the polls using slides, and then you go to that question. You make your choice, you got a few seconds, and we go to the next one. There is a submit button, and without clicking that, it won't happen. And once we went through all the questions, we will look at the results, and I'm very curious about what we'll get. So question 1, before getting anywhere with content, in the conference, we have a lot of Checkmk experts, but of course, sometimes also this year we have 50 or 60 people who are here for the first time, who have just gotten to know Checkmk. And therefore, we are curious to see what kind of Checkmk user you are. So also it helps us to see what these answers mean. So if you are all power users, of course you don't care about a basic mode, but maybe it's still necessary for some people. So if you are a beginner and have been using Checkmk for less than a year, would be that. A casual user is somebody with some experience, but using Checkmk for less than 6 hours a week. And power users are the ones with experience and work with Checkmk for more than 6 hours a week. Please vote now. The second question is one about content. I showed you 2 variations for the menu, either at the top or the bottom of the sidebar. I should not give you any comments now, because you should make up your mind yourself, but we'll talk about it in the end. So this is the version with 2 points. In the other navigation, we would have 4 points. So please choose now. Question 3. We have 2 versions how you could open either the mega menu, which has columns and lines, which could be harder to read, but you only need 2 menu points. Then there is one for monitoring, one for configuration, and that's it. Or the nice to look at side column, second column, which may require more main points. Question 4 is just a design question. Is it nicer to have 1 icon per topic or 1 icon per entry, really colorful? That is really a personal choice. With separate icons, it could help finding certain points quicker, but it could also be a bit wild. Curious to hear what you think. 5 is colors. Should we keep the colored icons, or would it be nicer and cooler to have a single colored unicolor icons? Question 6. This is a version we haven't implemented in the mockup. That is switching between basic and advanced in the mega menu or in other menus through a new-based button, as I showed you. Or you could have a button per topic. So every topic has its own basic and advanced switch. That would be a possible variation. Question 7. Do you want snap-ins to have a basic and advanced mode? So could you have the possibility to switch between the basic and advanced visuals? Question 8. Well, that's not really a choice. The question is, do you like the idea of what we're doing with the menus? You think that getting rid of all these buttons to put them all in the menus? Or do you, if you had a choice, would you like to keep the buttons as they are? If half of the people say we really like the buttons as they are, then of course we have to make up our minds about this. And we are very curious to see what the results are. Question 9. Also basic and advanced mode for the menus. Do you like that? Or do you think it's not necessary or maybe annoying? This setting is done per user, per menu. So if one of these menus has been switched, it remains switched for your setup. Maybe the edit menu will remember your preference everywhere or in certain parts of the page. That's something we haven't figured out yet. Question 10. Do you like this breadcrumb field? Where am I? Do you need that or not? To know where exactly you are, or maybe you know it anyway. Question 11 is about the suggested actions. There are two aspects to it. Once, as a beginner, I get a feel of where I would be going now, what I should be doing on a certain page. But also for the hardcore users, it could be interesting to see there is a big button for standard actions, and I just have to click it. Then talking about the search filter views, search filter for views. So clicking your filters through a drop-down menu, would you like to see that? Because now some views are not even offering all filters. I mean, some of them have to be added through configuration. And there are so many filters these days. So we have to do something. The question is this one good way to go? Or maybe it's not the right way to go. Question 13, the forms, basic and advanced mode. For these boxes in all forms, there are so many of them. So the host settings, global settings, users, spool editor, they are everywhere, these boxes. You think that's a good idea? So being able to hide the complex aspects to make it easier to find. And then as a beginner, I can easily see what's the most important stuff here. Oh yeah, there was one more thing I haven't mentioned. The mandatory fields. I didn't mention that before. But in my prototype, you can't see in Checkmk what is a required field. So we want to mark them, but that's not part of this question. So question 13, do you like being able to switch between basic and advanced for forms? Then a question where you have to think back to the times when you started with Checkmk. When you were a new user, what would have made the start easier for you in those days? For example, we had the idea that for the engine we could have created an install script. So I take my Linux computer, put a script on it, no matter what Linux I have, I'll just run it. It sees what distribution it is and asks me what's the Checkmk server, and it gets the right package and just installs it. Or maybe script-based. Something similar has existed for Checkmk itself. So I don't have to say, I need the package for Ubuntu 18.04 or whatever. So I can just say, I have the script running on my Linux system, and it tells me which package I need and downloads it automatically and installs it, and probably starts the first instance as well. There are there's one more than one choice if you need. Another idea would be a guided tour, so that in the guided tour there is a layover with arrows and speech bubbles guiding you where to click and where to go next. Would that have helped you in the past when you started? Then, of course, what's interesting for me, the tutorial is on YouTube. Do you like those videos? Would you have watched them? Or are you more the type that reads manuals? So if you want to expand on the videos, please let us know. Oh yeah, somebody give me a paper here, Christian. The director says, please explain the voting process. Yeah, well, don't forget the submit button. There's chat and Q&A in the upper. There's polls. Click that, and you find all the polls. If you've just discovered this, you will get a few minutes to go through all the 15 questions. Do not forget the submit button. If you cannot find it, Christian will read it and let me know. The polls will remain open until I start talking about them, and even later, until the end of the session. So approximately 20 minutes, polls will be open. Again, question 14. Would it have helped you when you started to have a clearer design, the order of things, or the tiny things? Would that have been nice for you? And we have to say, in the past, the manual wasn't complete, and even now there are a few things missing. Would have been a good manual. So if you shouldn't choose all of them. Pick the top 3 maybe. If you pick all of them, it doesn't make any difference to us. And question 15 is quite interesting for us. What we have shown you. Do you think we're on a good way here? Or do you think, no, that's probably not the right direction? The kind we're doing it, especially the major changes, whether we want to keep the sidebar, whether we want to put the main navigation in the sidebar, those are the main questions, not really the details. Not what point goes into which menu in the end. This is something we can still talk about and look at in feedback sessions, but the rough direction is something that we really want to know. If this is not the way to go, of course, we would like to get your feedback on it, why this is not the right way. So if you think... Yeah, that was not our address, so this is the right address. So write to ux@checkmk.com and let us know what we should do differently if you think it's not brilliant. You can, of course, also write us and tell us, this is all awesome, but it would be much better to know what you don't like about it. So should we do the questions first or the polls? Well, I'm really curious about the polls. Okay, we have to do it the other way around. You may need a few more minutes for the polls. So let's look at the questions. Many questions have arisen. So we did like last time. I'm strictly going through the number of votes. If you see a question that matters to you, just vote it up and we can talk about it. So Michael Frank, thank you for being very active today, Michael. Michael is writing, will it be possible in the future to be able to search for custom attribute in quick search? That's an interesting idea, especially we are thinking about doing the super search where you can look for more than before. So you can look for everything in one search field and then you get categories in the results. So I found this in hosts, I found this in Watto, I found that in attributes, something like that. Maybe the quick search can be kept for now and the attributes can be in there, but we don't have a clear concept for that yet, but it's a good idea. There is a question by Nicholas. He says, in the menus should be a quick search, pretty much like in the Windows start menu. I can't really ask you, but Either we could put the search into the mega menus. That's an interesting question, an interesting idea. I think you're talking about that because the drop down all. But what we could also have is a search field per page. So whether it's a host list or a water module or configurations and rules and whatnot. So you'd have a search field for every page. Andre asks, will it be possible to do configuration, to configure which menu points are visible in BASIC and which are not? Yes, I knew this question would come. And of course, can I configure which shortcuts I want for icons? And these are variables that we are talking about. I personally think that we should keep it simple, but if it gives a value to you, then this is something we might be able to offer. Clear on that yet. Then there's a question by Dirk, host downtime versus service downtime always confuses my colleagues. Checkbox is an improvement, but casual users are still confused. Yes, that's a classical case where a dialogue is not presented thoroughly and nicely. Because when a host is in downtime, this scheduled downtime is automatically being inherited to all the services on the same host. The case that I want to have it explicitly on some services is a special case, and I think that a complete rework of all menus should really be done in terms of labeling, so you know what's going on with them. Then there's a question by Andreas Breuer. Global expert mode would be nice. I think you're trying to say that there should be a master switch where you could have all these little switches in the program all to green or make them disappear and everything's just expert mode. That's actually a nice idea. Could possibly be done in Exentix. I also like and think the other idea is important because if you have a Fritzbox, for example, there is a global expert mode. And if you switch it on once or deactivate it, the Fritzbox is completely full with new settings. But locally, if I make a switch in a module, then I can easily see what's going to change in that menu. If there's a global mode, I make the switch and then I don't even see what's in the menu. But of course, for users who know the program very well, of course, it would be probably a cool idea just to have all this basic mode thing disappear. That's quite easy to implement as well, and we should probably have that. There's a question by Sebastian Heilmann. Do you plan to have more quick tips or like a reference to the handbook? I'm absolutely for it. We should integrate more with the handbook so that every spots in Checkmk where a handbook or a manual article is available, we should direct people to that. The context menu, for example, but also in the online helps. Right there, you should have further explanations, and I'm absolutely for that, and I think we should do that, and we'll do it. Christian Witz is writing, everybody says bakery, but why does it always say agent or monitoring agent? I'm thinking about what you mean. That's also a terminology issue. We are clear in our terminology, and we have to work on that and unify that, and you are right. This is not only with the agent bakery. There are other aspects where terminology is being used. For example, check and check plugin is something that I want to make sure, because I'm programming a check plugin and a host had 5 services or 5 checks. So the word check is not unambiguous and it doesn't help beginners to get to know the program. It's not only about beginners. I mean, you have a colleague, you're administrating that, and your colleagues then don't know what you're talking about because the terminology is not clear. Florian Spahn is asking, will there be shortcuts for the expanded search? For example, HG for host group? like abbreviations. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think it will go that way as it always does with Checkmk. Start building it, and then in the end, I have to write 20 pages for the manual, just for the search field. But let's start with that. I mean, your example is a bit difficult because you're talking about configuration and host group. No, it's quick search, right? Sorry. You can also look for configured host groups. And then the question is how to proceed that you don't confuse the users too much. But to expanding quick search for host groups is seamless and simple. Benjamin asks, poll jumps to the results without having clicked submit. Christian said polling. Oh yeah, okay, we're working on it. Udo Wöller is asking, is it possible to have in the upper right corner about 5 little icons to get to one of the last 5 views? Browser back often doesn't work, especially in Watto, because it's asking for recent data. Yes, if you have a form that works with HTTP post and you want to go back, of course you have the recent data question. But what we want to do is to fix that so that the browser back will work. Otherwise, we have the same problem as we have with the back and the icons. And we want to get there as we had it in the very beginning, that you can jump back and forth with the browser, that you can recognize that a form has been filled in already and you don't have to accidentally execute the same action twice. Reinhard Waas is asking, could you please expand the quick search fields syntactically, so by syntax, not only host names, service names, etc., but also water folder, host text, host and service groups, and so on. We can expand on the quick search to get further things and items for monitoring, and I'm quite sure we're already on that. Shouldn't be a big deal to include that in the water folder, for example, to include a water folder. Yeah, user-defined basic or expert, yes, that's what we are thinking about, because you can switch it as the user. You have your own expert and basic mode as a user, and you set it up for your needs. If we want to have a global administration and maybe the admin can give a certain user just the right to look at the basics, not the expert mode, details we have to think about. Niklas is asking, is an optical differentiation between configuration pages and view pages something that could be done? Yes, Niklas, that is something I'm really looking into, to have these two worlds, configuration and monitoring. Because, you know, in configuration, everything works a little different. You have to activate changes. Everything I do is not immediately active. They're always in limbo. And I want to make sure that we have an optical differentiation. I'm not sure how we're going to do that. Color is a very large change, but somebody who's been working with us on this topic has probably a few more ideas, so we can see how we do that. Christian said we have more than 1,000 hosts that we have to do maintenance on with downtime. The comment for that is only reachable through 2 menus. Is there a way to make everyday doing easier? Well, let's collect these minor issues, and I cannot tell you exactly what we're going to do when, but these small things that are especially important for power users, we're going to look into that. We keep in touch. Please write to us at the UX address, ux@checkmk.com, and we will collect that and really take it into account. Christian Michalski is asking, what about bubble rectangles or gorge dashlets? Dashlets, we want to build a lot of them. We're starting with simple ones, but really step by step we want to expand on that, not just for the 1.7 and 1.8, we want to keep going in that direction. If you've got cool ideas in other applications, for example, please send us an email to the email address I mentioned, so we get good ideas and maybe we can also use them for our dashboards. Well, we have 10 minutes left, I'd say. I would like to talk about the polls, of course. And once we finish the polls, and if there's time left, then of course we can have further questions. So I'm going back to the polls in the slides so we get an overview again of what was actually being asked. So the first question, what kind of user are you? We said 15% of beginners, 12% beginners, 21%, and 62% power users. Yeah, and that basically confirms what we expected. I'm happy that there are many beginners with us because this conference isn't just a VIP club for expert users, so we're glad to have you. 127 have voted, so more than half, and that's a good start, good number. Question 2. Would you prefer the top of the bottom? And 54% said top and the rest said bottom, so it's a head-to-head decision. I prefer bottom, but that's because I'm used to it. I'm pretty sure that expert users tend to look at the bottom of the page. If it ends up 50-50, we may have to implement a setting for that because we're still arguing what the default should be. Question 3 is what menu type you like better? This is also very close, even closer. It's 52 to 48%. It's almost like US elections. Of course, this makes it a difficult decision because we are not sure whether we want to make it configurable. Let's see. I'm happy with Mega Menu, and Mega Menu is 2% ahead, so I would say that's a majority, but there may be a few more votes on that. Next question, the icon question. And icon per topic has 1. At least 2/3 think that the colorful icons are not really helping, maybe too colorful, maybe a bit childish, but they like the icon per topic. And personally, I would say I agree. And finding something, maybe I'm looking at colors too much, but we should probably leave it at then. So, do you like colored icons? Of course, it would be interesting to know the combination. So, who voted in question 4 and who voted in question 5 and what combinations are there? But the colored icons are the preferred options with 60%. I also prefer the colored icons not because they look better, but because it's easier for me to find them. I know downtimes on orange, especially when there are many icons. Question 6, the switch per topic or per menu? 2/3 said per menu is better and not per topic. Question 7. How did you like the snap-ins? So 3/4 think it's a good idea with the snap-in because I like that because I also like the idea and it's not that complicated to implement. So to have some snap-ins that support that. Question 8. Is the question about the menus, and 93% like that. I find that relieving. The 7% who don't like it, I would like to hear from you. These are 10 people. Please send us an mail. You have an idea in the back of your head what could be even better. Have alternatives for us, or what you don't like about menus. Please let us know. Maybe we find a solution for you. Maybe, get things in the right direction for you. Question 9. was about switching in the menu, basic and advanced. The poll was the other way around. So 80% think that's a good idea. I also like that. It won't do any harm, I think. So yeah, if we want to make the advanced global as well for the power users, I think then it's a nice feature that doesn't affect too much. I hope that the 20% who said no are not thinking that it's horrible, but that they think they don't need it really. Navigation for Breadcrumbs, 69% said yes, please do it. 96%, sorry, said yes, that's good. Generally, the suggestions, that was 11. 80% thought that was good. I like to have feedback like that. What did not surprise me, but what I'm happy about is also when it comes to search values, 89 or 90% think that yes, that would be one way to get all this searching under control. It's a feasible solution. It's not a big break from what we have now, so good feedback. Question 13. The thing about the forms, 88% believe that this would work well for forms. Of course, the bias is towards the power users because they are the majority here, but still, I like this feedback. I'm happy that also experienced users think that it could help them, even though they know the original version and work with it. No, question 14, that's interesting. What would have helped you when you were starting with Checkmk? Agent installation check and Checkmk scroll script only had 7 or 5%, which I find interesting. That tells me that the installation of Checkmk is simple enough. We were almost starting on working on this, but maybe we should just invest our energy in something else. Because, well, installation can be simplified here and there, but in general, it seems to be something that's quite simple to do, even for beginners. Guided 2 has 18%. Well, don't see it as a correlation to 100% because, I mean, you didn't need to vote for everything at once, but tutorial videos have 22%. The details of user interface are at 17%, so they are all at a similar level. And 1/3 of you does like a complete user manual. And I'm with you on that. And I'm happy to be able to tell you that most articles are now in the manual. The final question is really interesting for me. I'm excited. 98% said yes, and you did consider that these are just ideas. I mean, we want to have you on board on all of this, but this gives us a motivation and a good feedback. So we are still on track. We will talk to you about this extensively in the forum, in the community channels that we have opened, and I'm really curious about what's going to happen. And it won't take long. For the 1.7, we want to have these construction sites that I mentioned done, so the sidebar and the dashboards. We will have many. But it's just the beginning. In the end, this project of user design, user experience is not a one-off issue. It's something that we will permanently work with. We have and people working for us, especially for that topic. We have 2 colleagues. We have an internal developer with resources so that we can really keep going in that direction. Also on topics that we haven't talked about today. And of course, we want to make new features come up in Checkmk, and we want to make sure that these features are, from the beginning, give you a good user experience and not just later after we fix them. So there is a little information for you on the final slide for tonight. So at 6:15, I will be ready at the Ask Me Anything session with Lars and Jan. Is Lars with us? No, just Jan. And in parallel, there will be further sessions. We put it like this. These Ask Me Anything sessions are either in German or English. There is no translation. Every session exists twice, once in English, once in German. And if you want to visit two different sessions, you can, they're all mixed. So everything that's in the first half in German is then in English and the other way around. At 9:45, we have our evening event in Corona mode. So basically, you get your own drink, your own beer. You have a bit here at the office. We will chat, talk, you can ask us questions. It will be a bit more informal, less technical, and we are looking forward to seeing you there. So we can have some fun tonight. Here it says 8:45 would be the end. It may take a few minutes longer if we have fun. We should fall to bed at some point though, so we are fresh for tomorrow. So that's my presentation for now. I'm so happy that so many of you were here today. More than 300, interestingly. And we will see you soon after a short break at the Ask Me Anything at 6:15 in one of the rooms. Thank you for voting. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for the positive feedback for the user experience. And I'm looking forward to 1.7.